The laughter didn't reach me. It never really had in the last few years, but tonight it was sharper, louder, like I was hearing it through glass. My hands rested on the tablecloth I ironed that morning, the same one my late wife used for birthdays. They were using it now, like a prop in a play I wasn't welcome in. Mark clinked his glass. 75 folks, can you believe it? Still kicking, huh, Dad? He grinned at the others, not at me. I mean, I thought we'd have to wheel you in like a museum piece. I smiled, just enough to keep the peace. Olivia, his wife, snorted. You're lucky he's not charging you rent for still living here. I let out a small laugh, tried to ease the air. I suppose I'm overdue, huh? That's when Mark's face changed. His voice dropped. Yeah, Dad, you're just dead weight. The table went still, forks hung midair. No one spoke. My granddaughter shifted uncomfortably. My youngest grandson stared into his plate. I built this life, Mark continued, waving a hand around the dining room. The house, the cars, the job, you're living off me like I owe you. You don't owe me anything, I said quietly. My throat burned. I was here long before this house had a roof. I built the foundation with my hands. Mark scoffed. Yeah, and what now? You sit around all day reading newspapers and sipping coffee while I pay the bills. I looked at Olivia. She didn't blink. She just kept cutting her chicken, slow and deliberate. If anyone's listening, don't make the mistake I did, I thought. Don't give everything and expect love to protect you. I can start contributing more, I said, voice shaking. Maybe part-time work. I still have my pension. Oh, come on, Mark cut in. You just mess up the taxes, just stay out of the way. I looked down at my plate. No one had touched the cake. The candles melted into wax puddles. Later, after they'd gone upstairs, I sat alone in the dim kitchen. The silence pressed against my chest. I stared at the untouched slice of cake. The room smelled like smoke and old memories. The hallway light clicked off. I whispered into the darkness, Mary, if you were here, would he still speak to me like that? Outside, the wind rattled the window. I stood slowly and placed the uncut cake in the fridge. Tomorrow, I'd bring it to the community center. Someone there might smile when they saw it. Before I turned off the light, I glanced back at the table. A single party hat sat slumped over beside my chair. That's when I knew this wasn't my home anymore. I tried the key again. It scraped and stuck, but the lock didn't turn. I stepped back, checked the house number like a fool, 421. My home. But the brass numbers looked newer, like someone had polished them just this morning. Inside the window, two movers in matching shirts carried boxes labeled Mark and Olivia bedroom. I saw one of them laughing, tossing something onto the couch. A pillow embroidered with home is where the heart is. My wife stitched that during chemo. I knocked, then banged. Mark opened the door halfway, phone still in hand. What are you doing here? He asked, like I was a stranger on his lawn. My key doesn't work. I had the locks changed. Why? He sighed like I was burdening him again. We're renovating. Too many old things cluttering the place. I stepped forward. You mean me? He didn't deny it. You'll be staying elsewhere for now. Where? Mark pulled an envelope from his back pocket and handed it to me. Everything in there. I've already spoken to the staff. They'll be expecting you. I opened it. A pamphlet for Silver Pines Assisted Living. A one-way bus ticket. A printed note that read, Patient requires supervision for memory-related concerns. My voice broke. You filed for guardianship. We had to. Olivia said you were forgetting things, getting confused, unsafe. You mean I left the porch light on once? He shrugged. It's for the best. I felt the edge of the paper slice my thumb. I didn't even flinch. I looked past him into my house. The family portraits were gone. The mantel was bare. Even the worn recliner where I used to nap with the dog gone. My photos. They were too old. Mold risk, he said flatly. You threw away your mother's china. He turned away. We needed space. My knees felt weak. You didn't even talk to me. You wouldn't have understood. I'm not dead, Mark. He didn't reply. I turned and walked down the steps, my suitcase trailing behind me like some leashed humiliation. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just kept walking, one step at a time, until the house disappeared behind the trees. At the bus stop, I pulled a photo from my pocket, the last one of Mary and me, taken the year before she passed. Her hand rested gently on mine, her smile soft. "I'll find a way back, Mary," I whispered. "I promise." The wind picked up, and the corner of the bus ticket flapped against my hand like a warning I refused to read. Behind me, the house stood still, its windows staring like eyes that no longer recognized me. The room they gave me smelled like hand sanitizer and loneliness, the kind that seeps into the walls and lingers in your clothes. Every morning felt the same: pills, weak coffee, a forced smile from the nurse as she checked my pulse like I was already halfway gone. But I wasn't gone. Not yet. After a week, I asked the manager if I could get my mail. She seemed surprised, said Mark had requested everything be forwarded to his home. I insisted. After some back and forth, she gave in. "We'll hold any future mail in the front office," she said, tapping her nails on the counter like I was asking for something I didn't deserve. That afternoon, I sorted through a pile: insurance forms, brochures for funeral planning, one envelope from the bank. I opened it with shaking fingers. My savings gone. $23,411, drained over 5 weeks. I read the transaction history twice, then a third time. Furniture stores, a down payment to a real estate agency, spa treatments, a payment labeled Olivia Veneers. And there it was, printed in clean black ink: joint account holder, Mark Whitman. He'd listed himself as cosigner. I never approved that. I called the bank. The woman on the line sounded cheerful, until I told her who I was. "Oh," she said. "Yes, Mr. Whitman. Your son presented a power of attorney form authorizing financial control over your accounts." "I never signed one," I said, my voice dry. "Well, the form was notarized and filed." "By whom?" There was a pause. "It appears the notary was a William P. Riker, same address as your son's residence." I hung up. My heart wasn't racing, it was still, my breath steady. The rage didn't come like thunder, it came like a slow tide. I went back to my room and sat on the edge of the bed. My knees creaked, but I barely felt them. I pulled out my old flip phone, the one Mark didn't bother to take. I scrolled through saved voicemails. Found the one I'd listened to so many times after Mary died. Mark's voice, soft back then. "Don't worry, Dad. I'll handle your bills for you. You don't need to worry about anything anymore. Just rest, okay?" He hadn't been handling. He'd been harvesting, stripping me down in plain sight, while everyone else saw a caring son. The lights in the hallway flickered as someone passed with a dinner tray. I didn't move. I sat there, holding that crumpled bank statement in one hand and Mary's photo in the other. That night I slept with my shoes on. Not out of fear, but because I knew I was done being still. The knock came just after breakfast, sharp and familiar, not like the soft, apologetic taps from nurses. I shuffled to the door of my room, and there stood Henry, mailbag slung over his shoulder, cap slightly crooked, same as always. "Mr. Walker," he said, voice low, "didn't mean to startle you." "Henry," I breathed, surprised. "What are you doing all the way in here?" He held up a small bundle of envelopes, bound tight with a rubber band. "I've been sorting through the redirected mail. These kept bouncing back. Final notices, billing warnings, thought you'd want to see them yourself." I took the bundle and sat down on the edge of my narrow bed. Electric, water, property taxes, all delinquent. The dates didn't make sense. These should have come to me months ago. "I didn't even know they were sending these," I murmured. Mark said he'd handle the bills. Henry scratched his chin. Yeah, about that. I've been delivering to your old house still, can't help but notice everything being sent to Mark now. Not just bills, deed notices, tax evaluations, property ownership statements. My throat tightened. Deed notices. He nodded, frowning. Mr. Walker, I don't want to overstep, but something feels off. That house, your house, it's all listed under Mark's name now. I stared at him. That can't be right, I never transferred it. Well, I see what's printed on the envelopes. Public record might tell you more. You might want to check the assessor's office just to be sure. I looked down at the faded photo of Mary tucked into the corner of my dresser mirror. I remembered her walks, how she'd wave to Henry every morning like clockwork, cup of tea in her hand. She trusted him. So did I. I don't have a way to get there, I said, barely above a whisper. Henry didn't hesitate. I'm off at noon. I'll come back with the truck and take you myself. You've got a right to know what's happening. I nodded, unable to speak. For a moment I felt seen. Not pitied, not managed, seen. He turned to leave, then paused. You know, your wife once told me you built that porch with your own hands. Every plank, I said, took me all summer. Henry looked down, then back at me. Then someone better explain why your name isn't on it anymore. When he left, I sat with the letters in my lap, the edges sharp against my fingers. I didn't cry. Not then. But the quiet in the room pressed down harder than ever. Sometimes all it takes is one person showing up at the right door. And sometimes that door is locked, but not for long. The clerk behind the counter didn't look up when I handed her the slip of paper Henry helped me fill out. Property record request, she asked, typing. I nodded. 421 Glenbrook. She tapped a few more keys, then walked to the printer behind her. The machine groaned, coughed, and spat out 3 sheets. She slid them across the counter without meeting my eyes. Deed transfer on file, dated 6 months ago. I picked up the top page. My fingers shook as I scanned the text. At first I didn't understand. Then I saw it under grantor, my name. Under grantee, Mark Whitman. And there it was, my supposed signature. The W was too wide. The loop in the K was closed, mine was always open. It looked like someone had tried to copy it by memory, close enough to fool a stranger, but not me. I whispered, I never signed this. Behind me, Henry hovered by the doorway, watching my face carefully. The clerk, finally looking up, asked flatly, Is there an issue? I think this is forged. She handed me a pamphlet. You can file a dispute with the county assessor. Next window. I sat in the waiting room for nearly an hour before someone pointed me toward legal aid. That's where I met her, Helen. Mid-50s, sharp eyes, and a voice that didn't waste time. She took the documents and read them slowly. Do you have any medical records stating cognitive impairment? She asked. No. Any signed power of attorney? Not that I ever agreed to. She studied my signature, then the one on the deed. This curve is wrong, she said, pointing with her pen. See that? That's hesitation. Whoever signed this had to think about how your name was spelled. I swallowed, so it's forged. She nodded. That's forgery, sir, and elder financial abuse. I let out a sound I hadn't meant to. It wasn't quite a sob, but it caught in my throat like one. I leaned forward, but he's my son. Helen didn't flinch. Then he should have protected you, not stolen from you. The words sat heavy in the room. I looked down at the paper, at the broken version of my name, twisted and reassembled like a mask. I raised him better than this, I muttered. Helen didn't respond right away. Then she said gently, That may be true, but you raised him, not who he decided to become. I sat there for a long time, the document crumpling slightly in my hand. Outside the office window, 2 boys passed by riding bikes, shouting, laughing. The kind of sound that used to echo off our driveway. I closed my eyes. Forgiveness could wait. First came the truth. Henry slipped into the care center's lobby the next morning, eyes darting around like a man carrying contraband. He pulled a thick, rubber-banded bundle from his mailbag and placed it gently in my hands. "Found these in the reroute bin," he said quietly. "All addressed to you, all marked return to sender. Someone changed your forwarding address twice." I carried the envelopes back to my room. The nurses pretended not to notice. Everyone here pretended not to notice. I sat at my little table and peeled them open one by one. Medical bills, bank correspondence, insurance junk. Then one envelope stopped me, heavier paper, gold-edged, from Henderson and Rowe, attorneys at law. The date stamped across the top was from 3 months before Mark threw me out. My wife's trust attorney. I tore it open. "Dear Mr. Walker, we are pleased to inform you that Mrs. Mary Walker's inheritance fund has matured and is payable to you as the surviving spouse. Please confirm where you wish the $480,000 transfer to be sent." $480,000. My hands began to shake so violently that the paper rattled like a small engine. Mark must have intercepted it. He must have answered pretending to be me. I pressed the letter to my chest and stared at the wall. "All those nights," he said, "don't worry, Dad. I'm taking care of everything." All those calm smiles when he told me not to stress about the bank. I had trusted him with everything, with me. Henry knocked softly and stepped inside. "Everything all right, Mr. Walker?" I handed him the letter. "She left it for me. Mary left this for me." He scanned the page, his brow tightening. "Good Lord." "He took it," I said, voice trembling. "All of it. The house, the savings, her inheritance. He didn't just rob me, Henry, he erased me." Henry looked at me for a long moment. "Then we'll get it back." I wanted to believe him, but belief had become expensive. I folded the letter carefully, slid it into my jacket pocket, and looked at Mary's photo on the table. Her smile had faded over the years, not in memory, but in the print itself, bleached by time and sunlight. "I'll set this right, Mary," I whispered, "even if it's the last thing I do." Outside the window, Henry stood by his truck, hands in his pockets, waiting like a sentry. The late afternoon light cut across the lot, catching the gold edge of that attorney's envelope where it stuck from my coat. It gleamed like proof that the dead still kept their promises, and the living still had debts to pay. Helen didn't rush me. She let me move at my own pace, slow, deliberate, tired. But beneath that, I could feel her urgency. The kind that wraps itself in politeness because time is no longer on your side. She slid a yellow legal pad toward me. "We're going to build a case, quietly, one piece at a time." My hand trembled as I picked up the pen. She asked me to write my name 10 times just like I always had. "Sign like you did your mortgage, not how you sign greeting cards," she said. I nodded. It took effort, but I did it. We compared the curves, the loops. My real signature was fluid, aged, but consistent. The one on the forged deed, stilted, cautious, artificial. Over the next few weeks, Henry became my quiet courier. He delivered notarized letters, affidavit forms, and every document Helen needed. Each time he'd come by, he'd nod like a man who knew something sacred had been violated and wasn't going to let it slide. I recorded everything. Every time Mark called to check in, I let the voicemail play through. His voice always sounded so kind. "Hope the staff's treating you okay, Dad. Let me know if you need anything." He never left a number, just control wrapped in sugar. One morning, I called the bank again, a different branch. I told them I needed to confirm who had access to my accounts. The woman on the line hesitated. "Well, your son informed us of your condition. Said you'd been declared legally incompetent. We have that documentation on file." My blood turned cold. "What document?" I asked. "A physician's letter signed and notarized. Would you like me to mail a copy?" "Yes," I said. "Mail it directly to me." The envelope arrived 2 days later. I sat with Helen as we opened it together. The letter was brief, clinical, cold. This patient is no longer capable of managing personal or financial affairs due to progressive cognitive decline. Signed, Dr. Benjamin K. Raleigh. Helen raised an eyebrow. That name's familiar. She typed it into her laptop. Less than 5 seconds later, she turned the screen to face me. Dr. Benjamin Raleigh, not a licensed physician, not even a nurse. Local notary, she said, runs a mobile service, lives 3 blocks from your son. I leaned back in the chair, breath caught somewhere between disbelief and clarity. Mark hadn't just stolen my money. He had built a paper cage, a fake diagnosis, a false narrative, signed, stamped, and mailed into the system. I wasn't declared unfit. I'd been silenced. Helen closed the folder gently. He covered his tracks, but now we're uncovering them. The rage didn't rise like fire this time. It sat inside me, steady as stone, and that stone was moving. Helen slid the folder across the desk without saying a word at first. Just a look, steady, quiet, waiting. Inside was everything. The forged deed, the fake medical note, the bank transactions, the missing letters. A mosaic of betrayal, piece by piece. "We have what we need," she said. "Now it's your turn." I didn't respond right away. My hands rested on the edge of the desk, old fingers curled like roots. I thought of Mark as a boy, scuffed knees, hands sticky from popsicles, asking me what a mortgage was. He used to look at me like I knew everything. And now I knew too much. I reached into my coat and pulled out the letter from Mary's attorney, the one he tried to bury. I laid it next to the file. Helen tapped it gently. "She wanted you to have this." "She knew he'd try something," I said. "She always saw him clearer than I did." Helen nodded. "Then let's honor her." The next hour was a blur of notary stamps and formal declarations. She guided me through each paragraph with the same care she might give her own father. By the end, I'd signed the most important document of my life. I rewrote my will. The house, still in legal dispute but slowly tilting in our favor, would go to Henry. Not because I owed him, but because he'd done what family should do. He looked out for me. He saw me when everyone else looked away. Mary's matured inheritance, every cent of the $480,000, would be split across veteran housing programs and a small community foundation that restored homes for seniors. Not a penny to Mark. Not to the man who called me dead weight. Not to the son who stole with paperwork instead of fists. Not to the boy who grew up to believe that old meant disposable. Helen watched me sign the final page. "You're about to teach them a lesson in dignity, Mr. Walker." I looked up at her. "Justice doesn't always shout," I said. "Sometimes it waits, watches, sharpens itself in silence." She gave a quiet smile. "Well, silence is over." We filed the new will under seal, binding airtight. I walked out of the office into the sharp autumn air, the city sounds pressing in from all sides. The leaves on the sidewalk crunched beneath my shoes like old paper. Behind me, the door shut with a soft click. For the first time in months, I didn't feel small or powerless. I felt deliberate. In my pocket was a copy of the new will, warm from my hands. I whispered to no one in particular, "Let's see how he handles this paperwork." And I kept walking, slow, certain, toward the justice he never saw coming. The courthouse smelled like old varnish and waiting. I sat on the cold bench outside the chamber, my worn jacket folded neatly in my lap. Helen stood beside me, flipping through our file one last time. Her calm steadiness reminded me of Mary, not warm exactly, but unshakable. Mark arrived with his usual flourish. Tailored suit, gold watch catching the light. His lawyer, younger, smug, whispered something that made Mark smirk. Then Mark saw me. He chuckled. "You came all this way in that," he said, glancing at my shoes. I didn't respond. I just looked at the courtroom door. You really think this is gonna go anywhere? He added, quieter now. You don't even have your name on the house anymore. Helen answered for me, not yet. Inside, the judge, an older woman with sharp eyes, asked us all to be seated. She addressed the courtroom with clipped efficiency. No drama, just facts. Today's hearing concerns allegations of elder financial abuse, fraud, and unlawful transfer of property. Mark sat relaxed, one ankle over his knee, confident. That confidence started to wilt 5 minutes in. Helen played the voicemail first. Mark's voice, smooth and calculated, echoed across the wooden walls. Don't worry, Dad. I'll handle your bills for you, just trust me. The judge didn't blink. Then came the bank statements. Then the forged power of attorney. Then the medical declaration, signed by a man who wasn't licensed to give prescriptions, let alone pronounce mental unfitness. Mark shifted in his chair. Then the deed. Helen laid it down like a sword. Your Honor, the signature on this deed does not match Mr. Walker's authenticated samples. A forensic handwriting expert has confirmed this. The expert took the stand. He didn't need to speak long. This signature, he said, pointing with a laser pen, was drawn, not written. The hesitation here and here are signs of tracing. Mark's lawyer stood up, tried to object, claimed stress, memory lapses, good intentions gone awry. The judge raised her hand. Enough. She looked at Mark. You declared your father incompetent without medical cause. You forged his signature. You rerouted legal mail. You emptied accounts and attempted to liquidate assets that were never legally yours. Mark opened his mouth. She banged the gavel. Mr. Walker's property is to be restored. Your financial accounts are frozen pending civil litigation. Your notary license is revoked effective immediately. This court finds in favor of James Walker. The courtroom buzzed like a hive, rattled from sleep. Mark stood slowly. Dad. I didn't look at him. Not out of hate. Because hate still gives a man your attention. Instead, I stood up, buttoned my coat, and walked past him. Outside, the sky was gray but clean. Helen caught up beside me. You did it, she said. I nodded. No, we did. And for the first time in years, I walked away without anything to prove. The house looked both familiar and not. Fresh white paint covered the old siding. The gutters were new, but the porch she still held the same creak under the third step. I stood there a moment, hand resting on the rail I once built with Mary beside me, both of us laughing through sweat and sawdust. The blue door was still there. Mary always wanted it that color. Makes the place feel alive, she used to say. Mark hated it, said it looked cheap, repainted it gray the week after she passed. But now there it was, fresh, proud, and impossibly blue. Henry opened it with a grin, towel slung over his shoulder like he'd just finished washing the windows. Thought you'd show up today, he said. Kettle's already on. I stepped inside slowly, breathing in the air. Lemon and wood polish, none of the old bitterness. The space felt lighter. The living room had been rearranged, fewer things, more light. But the bones of it remained mine, ours. I kept the porch swing, Henry said as we sat down. Repaired the chain, thought it might matter. It does, I said, more than you know. He poured the tea and pushed a cup toward me. You'll always have a chair here. I looked around the room. No portraits of Mark. No signs of what he tried to turn this house into, a monument to ownership, not love. Henry pointed at the small shelf near the window. On it sat a single framed photo. Mary, wearing that wide straw hat, holding a garden spade and grinning like a girl half her age. I hadn't seen that picture in years. Thought it was lost in one of Mark's boxes. I found it in the attic, Henry said quietly. Figured she should still watch over the place. My eyes burned, but I blinked it back. She'd like you, I said. You remind me of how things used to feel before all the noise. He nodded, sipping. Feels like home now. Not mine, not yours, just whole again. We sat in silence. Not the empty kind. The good kind, the kind you only get after the war has passed and you've made peace with what can't be undone. I reached into my wallet and pulled out the weathered photo I'd carried with me through every step of this storm. Mary smiling, her hand resting on mine. I held it up to the sun coming through the window and whispered, "The house is in good hands now." No thunder, no applause, just the quiet clink of two teacups. Justice hadn't marched in with banners. It had arrived slowly, like paint drying on a blue door.